The current American justice system is not just. It doesn't serve to keep people safe and often causes them to live in fear. Incarceration rates have risen and crime hasn't decreased. I don't know about you, but if something doesn't work, I usually stop doing it. So why are we throwing away billions and trillions of dollars on a system that that hurts people's lives and doesn't do what it's supposed to do? We all exist within this flawed justice system, and it affects us daily, even if we're not aware of it. The criminal justice system, as it is today, is flawed, and there are many reasons why it should be changed. As a sociology student and someone who works in a federal juvenile corrections facility, I see a lot of problems in the current American justice system, and today I'm going to focus on 3 major problems in the current system, which are the harmful educational and psychological effects of incarceration on youth, the inherent racism in the criminal justice system, and the fact that incarceration in the United States isn't effective in economically as well as an effective form of punishment. There are many educational and psychological effects of incarceration. For example, juvenile corrections facilities and disciplinary alternative schools do not have to provide youth with an adequate education. Therefore, juvenile corrections facilities have few, if any, educational resources to provide the youth. Furthermore, many young people who commit crimes are sent to these disciplinary alternative schools, which are largely privately run and therefore do not have to meet educational accountability standards, unlike public schools in the United States. An early entry into the criminal justice system creates barriers for re-entry into the traditional classroom after release. And according to a recent Justice Policy Institute report, imprisonment, especially as an adolescent, is incredibly psychologically taxing. In the same report, a study of incarcerated 9th graders who returned to school after incarceration showed that within 1 year of re-enrolling, 2/3 to 3/4 of these students dropped out. And after 4 years, less than 15% of this population of 9th graders had completed high school. Higher police presence in schools and higher arrest rates further increased distrust of the police and the criminal justice system as a whole among young people. And students are more likely now to be subject to school-based arrests, and this heavy police presence factored into other cultural and systematic practices can increase a student's likelihood of being incarcerated. Therefore, it's clearly not beneficial for students to be incarcerated, so juvenile justice especially needs reform. It's clear that it's not good for them psychologically or educationally, and I don't think that's what any parent wants for their kid, or what anyone would want for themselves, and it's somewhat unfair, and it hurts them in the long run. Furthermore, another main issue with the current criminal justice system is the inherent racism in the system as it exists today. Drug policy, for example, has been heavily influenced by race historically. And according to an article in The Atlantic, the difference in the way crack cocaine use in the 1980s was treated is vastly different from the way heroin use is today. And this is because of America's sharp racial divides and the differences in portrayal of crack and heroin users. Crack users were seen as violent and aggressive and mostly African American, while heroin users are seen as being in need of help and treatment. Though they are mostly white, race is never mentioned in the public discourse of heroin addiction, unlike that of crack cocaine. The Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914 is often cited as the beginning of the war on drugs in the United States, and this act gained traction largely because of racist government-sponsored propaganda against black people who were lumped together unjustly with cocaine use and Chinese people who were associated with opium use. According to a report by the Drug Policy Alliance, this propaganda sparked much of the support for the act that would eventually pass and ignite the modern war on drugs that we know today. So how can we continue to support this war on drugs when it was started by racist motivations? That's my question. I think that it's really important to look back, and we need to look at this current system right now and think about it again. with a modern viewpoint and understand the racial beginnings of this war on drugs. Black and Hispanic offenders, furthermore, are more likely to be sentenced to prison upon arrest. Prominent sociologists Eric Olin Wright and Joel Rogers state in their book, American Society, How It Really Works, that it is incredibly difficult to pinpoint the blatant racism in the criminal justice system, but their studies have shown consistently that not only are Black and Hispanic offenders more likely to be arrested, they're also more likely to actually be sentenced to prison than white offenders. Black people are also more likely to be stopped by police while driving in the first place than white people, but they're not more likely to be speeding. Wright and Rogers also found that black drivers are not more likely to speed than white drivers, but they're far more likely to be stopped and questioned by police. It is necessary to be aware that not only the fact that Black men have nearly 7 times the incarceration rates of white men, but that this does not mean that Black men commit 7 times the amount of crimes that white men do. There are many racist practices within the criminal justice system today that actively work against non-white offenders. And I think it's obvious why we need to question why that is and fix it. The current system, lastly, is simply not effective. Recidivism rates are very high in the United States right now, and crime is not being reduced. Juvenile detention increases the likelihood of recidivism, which is returning to prison to serve another sentence for another crime, according to the Justice Policy Institute. So we clearly need to reform the way that we handle juvenile offenses, because these youth are still more likely to go to prison later in life. Prisons are full now because of increased pursuit of drug-related offenses and other minor offenses, and 46.5% of prison inmates are incarcerated for drug-related crimes, according to a 2016 report by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Prison overcrowding is also directly linked to inmate misconduct and long-term psychological harm, according to the same study. Furthermore, prisons are very expensive. According to a report by Portland State University, it costs about $260 a day to keep someone in prison. And the current drug control system costs about $100 billion a year to maintain, according to a recent report by the Open Society Foundation. It's clear to me that the criminal justice system as it exists today, even from a pragmatic and economic standpoint, is simply not effective. That's just putting aside the psychologically taxing and extremely harmful effects it has on those subject to it. So today I talked about three main problems in current criminal justice system: the harmful educational and psychological effects of incarceration, inherent racism in the system, and the ineffectiveness of the current system economically and as a means of reducing crime. The criminal justice system as it exists today is flawed, and there are a plethora of reasons why it should be changed. And it's important to think about the invisible forces at work in our society, because things are often not as they appear on the surface, and we have to dig deeper. It's our civic responsibility to ask questions about these things and not just simply accept them as fact or as unchangeable. Incarcerated people, especially incarcerated youth, are often not discussed in our society and in our public discourse, but we must discuss them and their needs and challenge the way things are, because justice and human rights are what's at stake in this conversation. Thank you.